What's up, Comicbook.com? BD here. Welcome back to the studio at San Diego Comic-Con. The show is rolling on. It's very exciting right now. We're talking about Gotham Knights. I know everybody's very excited for this, myself included. We got the team, the geniuses behind this game. I'm not going to... This isn't the time to be humble, okay? We're here to celebrate. I want to talk about the game. First of all, it really hinges on like the central conceit that Batman has died and his wards are stepping up to kind of do what he was doing before. That's a big decision to make for a game. A lot of people are, going to associate with Batman. Whoever is brave enough to take this first question, I'd love to hear just about the discussion to do a Gotham game and have Batman have perished. I
was waiting for them to go slowly turn and like, slow turn.
I was going slow. I was just like,
no pressure, no pressure.
Well, I mean, there's the serious answer to that question. In fact, is that when we got our mandate to start a new franchise built around Gotham City, built around the Batman universe, right away we knew one of the things we wanted to be different was for players to have an extended period of growth and evolution for their character, for their hero. Because they'd be going out night after night and fighting crime. It wasn't going to be sort of a one and done scenario. It was going to be something that would unfold in a lot of different ways as they take on crime in the streets of Gotham City, on the rooftops, etc., but also uncovering these major mysteries and dealing with the major villains. So as soon as we started talking about this, we realized we need characters that can have real room and real potential to grow in radically different ways. And as soon as we started talking about that, it said, we're talking about an ensemble cast. We're not talking about one hero. We're talking about the Batman family. They're already awesome crime-fighting heroes to start out with in their own right, but there's room for them to evolve and sort of achieve their kind of ultimate state as the ultimate protector or Dark Knight of Gotham City.
And the advantage of making a game, it was hard technically, but the advantage of making it with 4 different characters is that we bring to the table 4 very different viewpoints, 4 different narrative styles, 4 different gameplay styles, which means there's at least one character for every player out there to really fall in love with and enjoy the game with.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to come to you next about the characters, which are Nightwing, Red Hood, Batgirl, and Tim Drake's Robin. I'd love to hear about, the selection of those 4 characters, what you got to really exploit, because they're all very different characters who fight for similar goals enough times. What was it like to develop those, and did you look at any DC Comics lore or anything like that to really land on them?
Oh, both myself and the writing team poured through the comic books. Most people, when we arrived on team, these characters were selected already, and they were selected for the fact that they were very different. As I said before, right? They each bring something very different to the chemistry of the game. But all of our writing came from a place of love for these characters, right? We each of my writers were assigned a voice, a character to own, and this moved a little bit during the course of the production, but first and foremost was like, I love this character, can I please work on that?
That's cool.
And that came through in so many ways, both in the larger cinematics and the overarching story and how we built the relationships and had them shift and change and gel during the course of the game, but also in how we worked with cinematics, who were very involved in our process. Wilson was invited to the writing rooms when we were doing the final review of the scenes, and would help with the final adjustments before it went to cinematics even, so that we could, sometimes push things further, because he would put a stamp on that and say, go do this crazy thing.
Well, twisted my rubber arm.
I was going to ask you, Wilson, can you kind of dive into how the cinematics, and if that includes the gameplay as well at all, how it changes and how it is defined by the character whose perspective we're playing the game through or experiencing the game through?
So, I mean, we're making a game about 4 different unique characters. We knew early on when we were kind of deep diving into like how we would create them is like, we didn't want to create a generic experience. We didn't want to have the same animations, the same cameras. We wanted a custom experience because each of the players are so uniquely different. They brought their own history to each of the storytelling, the interactions between the different characters. So we're essentially having to be forced, on my side, to create 4 cinematics in one. So what does that mean? Wow. That means like, structurally, you're going to see the same cinematic when you play as Red Hood, Nightwing, Robin, or Batgirl, but each of them are different. They're different in the way that they move. Sometimes we actually even have different cameras. I'm not going to spoil anything, but there are some certain cameras that Nightwing has specific attributes that we're focusing on.
Assets.
Everyone else sounded some sort of inside joke. Everybody just laughed.
Yes. But these are all the things that we wanted to make to really have the player enjoy what they're playing and really be focused on, this is the player I want to play, and then see a totally different experience when they play somebody else. And kind of have that comparison, and I think all of us as a group really tried to push this to the limit, and I think players are going to be genuinely really happy and really Anxious to see.
I'm like, that's the calmest anybody ever got me ready to run through a brick wall to experience something, because this sounds awesome. I do want to ask you, of the characters there, like, Batman does have plenty of sidekicks and rogues to choose from. Was Damian Wayne ever a character you considered?
I mean, so it's hard for me to answer that question without a major spoiler.
Okay.
In the storyline.
All right.
There
we'll
are
drop
reasons that will become very clear why Damien's not.
But
a
I
good
can
character.
say that I do love Damian.
Yeah.
Great deal.
Don't we all? Now, do you have to consider what's going on in comics and in movies and other television, other games at all when you're developing something like this, or do you just get free reign to kind of, like, is it a collaborative process in that way?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I can't state enough, DC as a partner on this is tremendously collaborative. Like, I know sometimes with IP that's well established across a variety of media, there can be like a kind of rigorous process of trying to make sure everything's perfectly aligned with everything else. What I like about DC, and it's reflected, I think, across all of the different platforms, is their willingness to entrust creators to bring their own interpretation to the mix. So from day one, when we said to them, we want to kill Batman, and they're like, cool. Okay, which version of that are you going to do? And that was the question. They weren't immediately going to the risks of that. They were going to the promises and opportunities there. So I think what I've really appreciated about it is, we have someone that we deal with week in, week out, and it's not just like me having sideline conversations with them. It's a bunch of the directors who are able to reach out and talk to DC and say, hey, listen, we're thinking about going in this direction. What do you think? Here's some concepts. Here's the scripts. Here's, and getting notes, but generally notes that really augment and clarify and align our version of events with things that are in the lore. We are not ever going to be as much of an experts in the lore as DC themselves, right? So it's something that we counted on them being able to go in and say, hey, there's an opportunity here if you're interested in this.
And also, as the game production advanced, even at some point when we were late in production, sometimes the thing would happen in the comics and we'd be like, this is perfect, we can fit this in super easily. And I was just like, slam, start talking to emergency contact Randy, and I would be like, I'm going to do the thing. And he was like, do the thing.
That's awesome. That's fun. I love that you guys are paying attention like that. I think it's going to come through. Now, like the past 25 years of video games, superhero games have been hit and miss. One of the biggest hits has been Batman Arkham games. I'd love to hear, like, a lot of people do associate Gotham and Batman with, that's the first thing that comes to mind for now. And I'd love to hear, are there similarities in your game between that? Are there big differences? Can you compare them at all?
I mean, like the boring top line verbal description is we are a third person action RPG open world game that supports 2-player co-op, right? So right away, even in the kind of, a bullet point description, you're going to see that there's some differences between us and the Arkham series. I'd say, there's some shared DNA in the sense that we obviously have brawler mechanics and traversal and some gadget fantasy and some detective fantasy that I think will be familiar to players who've played the Arkham series. But at the same time, we're also, feeling free to kind of draw inspirations from a variety of different aspects of the Batman mythology in ways that are a really good fit for an open world game where you're fighting crime night after night. Because we have chosen the Court of Owls as our main adversary, and that is a force that is very tightly connected to the history of Gotham City and how it evolved the way it did. What that lets us do when we're designing an open world is say, how do we make sure the players can experience that there's a reward to exploration and to scratching the surface of the city? Is there always something there that lets you know, yeah, this is a city that has real history, 350 years of it.
Has Scott Snyder weighed in on it yet?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, so what is that like?
We were really fortunate because almost from the very beginning, once we had the green light to proceed with this, DC put us in touch with Scott right away, and we had a chance to sit down with him and sit down with Jim Lee. I spent a day kind of going through our intentions on the game side, and they came back and said, oh, well, here's some things for you to think about in terms of like closing the loop on that arc and some things that you can do with Gotham City that we've been successful at in the past. Again, very collaborative, very supportive. But yeah, Scott and his work was a tremendous inspiration for us, and to have an opportunity to show him what we had in mind and see his reactions and get his input on that was really, really great.
And the Court of Owls is such a rich, fantastic story that gives so much depth to Gotham. It was very easy for us to take what is a comic book story as a springboard to develop that into fully fledged interactive narrative for a video game. It's
awesome
just
mystery.
so easy
That's
to
a
just
game.
layer more and more onto it and have fun with it.
Oh, it's going to be cool. Now, I mentioned Arkham and how that's such a big, successful game. And I mean, recently, like games like Arkham, games like Spider-Man and the Miles Morales that followed it, the superhero genre of video games is getting better and better, it seems. And when you're doing a game like this, there's a lot of eyes on it. Does that pressure, do you start to feel it? Do you start to get a little excitement out of that, or maybe a little bit of nerves, or both? How do you manage that?
I mean, from my side, it's really about how do we elevate ourselves up more. I mean, like, you're right, the quality bar is really set high with the games like Spider-Man and whatnot, but I mean, we're all artists, we're all game developers,
Sure.
we want to push the next level, and like for us, we see that, we do the nod, and we're like, okay, how do we step this up? And this is kind of what we're trying to do with Gotham Knights. We're really trying to deliver the storytelling. We're basically developing the characters that you're going to see them outside of their mask, outside of their superhero egos and whatnot. And you're going to see them living together as a group of roommates living in the Belfry, which most people will probably not expect to see. So it's going to be really cool.
Oh, it's going to be fun.
I can say too, for the narrative team, a lot of it was about focusing on what we were doing and just showcasing our love for the characters, because there were moments where we would just sit down and look at each other and go, we're making a Batman. And it was just like minds blown, but we had to step away from that because we had to make the game.
Yeah.
But like Wilson was saying, ultimately, like any game you make, it's about the characters and being in love with them, and also giving our players the opportunity to fall in love with them.
I love it. I do have to ask, this was the one question I was sent to ask. I don't know if you can answer either of these, so I'm going to ask them at the same time. Can you comment anything about DLC that may come to the game, or Justice Leaguers who may show up in the game?
We cannot comment.
I knew it, and that's why I was like, oh, we're doing this one last. No, this was it's awesome hearing from you guys about this game. I was excited for it. Now, I don't know, if there's a word beyond excited, I'm that now. So thank you so much for coming to talk about Gotham Knights. Comic-Con, Comicbook.com, make sure you stay tuned, and Gotham Knights is coming soon, so get ready for it, everybody.